YouTube is going to kill itself. I have been on this YouTube platform since basically the very beginning. I created my first account when YouTube was only somewhere between 6 months and a year old. It was soon after that I decided to begin uploading my own homemade little comedy skits, often about criticizing religion, and was in general part of the early community of YouTube video makers that were involved in an ideological argument over religion versus science. But that's not what this is about. At the start of last year, because I was stir crazy like most were, I picked up a hobby again that I had done on and off casually for a channel that I started in 2013. It was where I was recording myself reading fan fictions and then posting them on YouTube. Because of that, the video part of it served no purpose other than to be a cover image or thumbnail basically. But I got really into it and put up a lot of content over several years. Anyway, at the start of 2021, I decided to do one again, a fanfiction reading, just like the good old days. And then another, and it soon snowballed into a regular hobby to the point that I made an upload about every 3 days. This was very good for my mental health, and it allowed me to regain confidence, involving some anxiety about thinking my voice was dull and boring to listen to. But with practice I got better at reading with enthusiasm, expressing the emotions of characters in a way that seemed to almost border on maybe being considered professional voice acting. After about 4 months of finding myself addicted now to doing this regularly and pushing the feelings of depression out of my head as something that gave me a sense of purpose, I started to take it more seriously than I ever had. I invested in better hardware, which was a $300 microphone, and then signed up for a subscription with Artlist.io, a creator tool that allows me to download and have license to thousands of music and sound effects. Thinking at the time that it was a monthly subscription, it was instead an upfront payment of $700. I was pretty shocked when I lost my rent money for that fortnight, but because I decided that this investment would be worth it, instead of request a refund, I instead jumped on my bicycle to do a couple-day grind of Uber Eats deliveries, which I hadn't done for ages, because screw putting myself in danger during a pandemic for less than minimum wage when I get enough to live comfortably on unemployment. So now armed with the better equipment, music and sound effects, I started making my content a more serious quality, and I used my favourite storytelling podcasts like Lore as inspiration for the level of quality I wanted to reach. So this kept on until the end of the year, when I made another big upgrade for $300, that being to upgrade from Sony Vegas Pro 14 to edit my audio and video, to Vegas Pro 19. I was hyped and enthused for the new year that I would be doing this even more professionally from now on. Then, on the 29th of December, while I was unfortunately taking a little break to get wasted for a little bit over the holidays, I got the most horrifying news imaginable. Your channel has been removed for sexual content and blah blah blah. I knew that I had content on my channel that YouTube had only recently decided was immoral by their changing standards. I'd gotten a strike for one audiobook that they removed that I had made and already had up for 5 months by the time they noticed it. But yes, it was one of my many fanfictions I had read that involved descriptions of sexual situations. I used to read only that kind of fanfiction. It's what was popular and took the channel off to begin with. But I had brought that down to about half of explicit stories versus safe for work stories. But only because I'd happened to be finding safer stuff enjoyable to read willingly by my choice. I did not intend to cave into YouTube suddenly deciding what is or is not moral to be on their platform. After all, this is only audio. It's not like this content would be suitable to be on Pornhub or RedTube either. It really makes me wonder sometimes what is wrong with people's priorities these days. When gory and violent content is fine to put on YouTube, like Trevor's torture scene from Grand Theft Auto 5, But if anyone dares to show or even describe a female nipple, the Purian community is quick to demand the channel is destroyed, and then will usually try to go all out and link someone's videos that they make in their personal time to their bosses at work. Especially in this day and age when people are trying to provide content that adults can enjoy while they are doing the right thing for humanity at the moment by staying home. I know that for me, podcasts have been a lifesaver to keep me sane during these times, to have something to listen to while I sit around inside. So eventually, I had decided to contribute to the sea of audio content, since I started to feel a bit selfish by only consuming and not creating entertainment myself. I had only 10 days to go until that first strike was going to expire, and I had planned to, unfortunately, if I did reach a second strike, to obey and remove all of the explicit stories, if only to save that channel and the community I had built on it. I was already copying the nefarious stuff to other platforms, but was not ready to go and remove half of the channel yet. But instead of getting a second strike, they just unfairly skipped ahead to 3 all of a sudden and removed it all. Although I gave this personal backstory and my sub-story, this is actually about how behaviour like this from YouTube is getting way out of hand. Do they not realise they are shooting themselves in the foot, and that they have become completely different from what the creators had made it in the beginning that caused it to skyrocket and become a rival to mainstream TV as a place for people to spend their eyeballs on? This was because the generation that grew up on or watching YouTube enjoyed the freedom to watch what you want when you want, and although it was made by ordinary average Joes without anything more than a crappy webcam, and yet still be able to become more popular as mainstream TV declined in viewers. We would literally rather watch a guy talking in front of his webcam than be forced to watch ads every 6 minutes of a blockbuster high-budget TV show. We were finally creating and watching our own community content instead of what the few rich white men who own all the mainstream media companies made us watch. But YouTube is becoming more and more allied with those corporations, with how they are putting up clips from late night shows on TV, and that those are almost the only things on the featured page, and that you can no longer get a foothold there. You are no longer allowed to even discuss any opinion at all on almost any political stance, when you used to have the right to back in the day. And if you even mention the disease that is going on in the world right now, whatever opinion you express on it, you will get these strikes and soon be kicked out. I've seen it time and time again on my favourite news commentary shows like Drunken Peasants and Cult of Dusty. They keep getting accused of saying misinformation about that disease, and they keep having to dispute it over and over again, basically always being in a state of at least one strike. Just because the machine that runs YouTube keeps hearing them mention the flagged name of that disease. It is not your content creators that have changed YouTube, it is you, and that's what the problem is. You can't keep changing the rules on the people who have created the content for YouTube in the first place, since long before Google ever acquired it. The way YouTube is treating its creators is unacceptable, and we need to make a stand against it. They have become an employer for who knows how many people that now make their money here. And as an employer in the normal world, most would be required to follow the employment laws in the world. They would be required to provide an adequate reason for dismissal of someone from their job, or the loss of income from their job, for the removal of monetization for reasons as trivial as swearing a few times. But of course, YouTube gets to make its own laws that have an impact on the financial stabilities of those that, like I said, are creating the same content they were at the beginning. But they keep needing to reorganize their entire formats over and over again, and it only gets stricter and even less transparent what anyone is doing wrong, and how much it is the fault of malfunctioning machine algorithms, no matter how much creators might keep trying to appease it. I could go on forever about how much YouTube keeps screwing people. But the point is, they need a serious wake-up call. If YouTube keeps treating people like this, many of which, such as myself, were here since the beginning, it's really time for a boycott of this whole corrupt system that's taken over the site. It's gone downhill so much since the days of when I used to express my opinion and be able to engage with and listen to others' opinions. And in the days when YouTube converted me away from watching free-to-air TV ever again, and had me disconnect from the influence of mainstream media ever since, which has allowed me to expand my knowledge and values far beyond what the media titans in charge want to allow us to be able to know. I wish I had the kind of following and power to actually force YouTube to wake up to its own evil path that it's going down. Just like Google has abandoned their original slogan of "Don't be evil," so has YouTube, and they are now allowed to silence the voices of anyone they don't like. When I used to argue with religious people about science and history back in the day, I would not have wished for my worst enemy to have their platform to argue their opinion revoked. Sure, people can express themselves elsewhere, but now YouTube has become the monopoly on people's attention now that free-to-air TV has gone out of fashion. Not that I was even someone who was being political anymore on YouTube. I gave up on that back in 2011 when I stopped talking about my opinion because it was better for my mental health to just make and consume fun videos. I was just reading stories to entertain people that had nothing to do with reality. But I just have to hope that the big YouTubers start standing up for themselves, like we did when YouTube used to allow us to, and get information out and protest about PEPA and SOPA. This is the next big progress that needs to be made to bring back YouTube and stop being CorpoTube. YouTube is going to kill itself, and it will deserve it if it keeps submitting to these moral crusaders that don't want to let any of us have any fun while we are sitting around waiting in lockdown. It is not your content creators that have changed YouTube, it is you, and that's what the problem is. You can't keep changing the rules on the people who have created the content for YouTube in the first place, since long before Google ever acquired it.